I'm going to talk about benchmark descriptions. Um, and this is something that we had an idea at JSC and we used it in some of our things, but we want to see if it makes sense on a wider sense, on a wider scene in a way. Um, so the motivation for the benchmark descriptions kind of comes from follows. Uh, so as a community, I think we are on a decent path for reproducible continuous benchmarking. We still need to do some work, I guess, to get there, but we have different solutions as of now. We have Benchmark, Ramble, we have Reframe, and we have Jube with XRCB, and then there are quite a few other solutions as well. But benchmarking is generally quite a bit more, right? So you do run your benchmarks, but then you use them somewhere. So generally people use them for application development or for uh, production codes, but then people also use them for procurement and acceptance or for experimental evaluation of new hardware. And this is where some of the more complications come in the picture. So for example, you might have a newer architecture, or you might have a much bigger supercomputer that you are aiming than your current one, right? Or you might have a newer software. Or for example, with the mixed precision coming into play, you might have a different kind of hardware and a different kind of software. And you still want to run your benchmarks and you want to make sure that they can run in this new setup well and they can evaluate correctly. And this is much more nuanced information than just running the benchmark itself, right? Because you need to communicate how to interpret the results. You need to communicate what modifications you're allowed to do to your setup. And this is what we first ran in with JuBench, which is the Jupyter benchmark suite, which we used in the procurement of the JSC's exascale machine. And you can see it here on GitHub. And here what we essentially did is that for we had a suite of benchmarks for our procurement, and for each benchmark we had a repository which implemented the benchmark on our old machine, the Juelich booster machine. And then we had a benchmark scripts in Jube, then we had other stuff. But more importantly, what we had was this description.md file that you see here. And this kind of looks like this, where you have a short description of the benchmark. And the more important data here is that, for example, the runtime of the simulation is supposed to scale linearly with the number of GPUs, right? So this is kind of the information that is more nuanced. So here it is still kind of simple, but sometimes it can be more complicated. For example, you have to ensure that the memory is at least uh, like you at least have 30,000 nodes, fluid nodes on a single GPU node, things like this. And so what we did is we wrote this all in a description.md, and when we generated our benchmark results, we got this description.md into the benchmark report generation as well, so that we had in the results itself, we could have instructions how to in future modify this run or how to interpret the results. And if you look through that, you will see there are a lot of different steps. So the overview, the source, how to build it, how to execute it, verification, as I said, and then what kind of commitment you might want or what kind of expectation you want from the results. But we did this in Markdown, and then we kind of ensured that the structure was there manually. And and as we are doing much more applications now, we are thinking whether we want to go much more into the automated part, and if you could do this in an automated manner. And so that is where the schema comes in, because then if there's a schema, then we can kind of influence these descriptions. And there are some requirements from the schema. So enabling nuanced communication is, I think, the biggest one. But then we have to keep our descriptions open and adaptable, so that if there is a newer hardware which does things very differently, then you should also be able to use it to its fullest potential within the benchmark without trying to hack its way in or without not being consistent with the benchmark. And that's what the proposal is about, the benchmark description, which is kind of the meat of the talk in a way. And we started with something and we are experimenting with it. We are not really sure uh, if it's complete. So it's based on the Jupyter benchmark suite. So we have some experience with it, but then it would be good to see how to go about it. And yeah, and so the schema content, we can go over this document in a moment, but then the schema content is generally very similar to the JuBench stuff, where you have your overview, a quick start guide, and then the execution and verification of results and other stuff. And it kind of looks like this. So maybe I can show my screen here. Yeah, so then we have a YAML file here. So then we have a title, we have a schema, a name, authors, right? And then the overview section and all of this. And then we can kind of copy it around. Yeah, so this was kind of my short talk. What we want to achieve here is we want to see what kind of things make sense here. We we want to see if there's an interest in any of these outside of our center. Maybe other people are also doing benchmarks and also want to integrate the repository with the description in the same place. And we were also wondering what kind of other things that we might want here in the description itself. And the final thing is whether people find it useful or not. So yeah. So originally this was supposed to be a discussion kind of a talk. And I think maybe we can still do it. I am not sure if it works here, but yeah. If we can do it now, then it would be a good time for discussion. Otherwise, I'm happy to continue the discussion also in these channels. Thank you. And any questions or any comments?
Yeah. Do you want to run it? Do you want to run questions? I'll repeat the question. Any questions? Anybody? So I guess, Jayesh, do you have a lot of people contributing benchmarks like this one yet? I mean, how many folks, is this just internal to Juelich so far, or is it like a community that's actually contributing this?
Yeah, so the original procurement benchmarks were very Juelich internal. Well, not Juelich internal, but at least the people who were contributing to the benchmarks were from Juelich. But since then, we have used the benchmarks in from URI program, which I'll talk about in the next talk in ExaCV, which is the early access program for Jupyter. And for this, we had a lot of applications contributing their benchmarks. So we kind of now have around 70 benchmarks, let's say 70 plus benchmarks, which are running quite well, which are running at least in the automated manner at our centers.
Okay. And they're described this way, and they're running in the framework you're going to talk about later. Is that right?
Yeah, they are running in the framework that I'm talking about later. Not all of them are described this way. We wanted to allow people to not have to do all the work upfront. So, but a lot of them are getting there.
Okay, we got a question.
Hey, Evan Bollig from AWS. I've encouraged people earlier today also to come up with a cost estimate for what they're running. And I'm just curious, with best energy, best performance, CPU and GPU for your variants, are you also able to give a cost assessment for what the benchmark is actually incurring?
So by the cost assessment, do you mean the actual compute cost that was consumed when it was run?
Yeah.
Yes. So for that, we are doing it at our center, but we are not directly doing it in this framework. It's in an associated framework called LLView here, which is used at JSC, and there for each, let's see if I can find the correct thing. Yeah, job reporting. So for each job, we do give a table like this, and there you can see somewhere at the end, I guess this one. Yeah. So it's it has used this much power and this much core hours. Does that answer your question, or is it more of an estimate question that you had?
Yeah, no, that answers my question. Thank you. So I guess what I was really asking for was the dollars and cents estimate, but you could take the core hours or the kilowatt hours, and you could translate that into an actual billable unit.
Yeah, and we also have kind of a average CPU utilization and everything, so you could also use that eventually. We don't do that directly, but technically you could use that as well.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions for Jayesh?
I had one for the configuration and schema. Can those be used to translate between different benchmarking frameworks? So you have, I think Ramble and Benchmark were up there, and then also the JuBench suite. Is there some compatibility layer between those? Or are they two different to do that?
Yeah, so right now we don't have any compatibility layer, but I think we did discuss this at some point in the benchmarking working group, and not as specifically as a compatibility layer, but how to describe these configurations in general. And then once we are able to do that, then we would try to have a compatibility layer as well. So I guess that's the answer I want to give you.
Because what we've got Jube, we've got Excalibur, we've got Reframe, we've got Benchmark. Seems like a lot of benchmarking frameworks are emerging right now. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot of work to write one of those configurations
Yes.
too.
Yeah. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Jayesh?